Morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting of December the 14th, 2015. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Lotzenheiser if he would please provide us invocation.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity that you give all of us to be involved in the work of this school district. I pray that we would all do our very best for the boys and girls of this school district. And Father, we know that many of our employees and many of our students and their families will be traveling during the Christmas holidays. We just ask for your travel mercy, that you would watch over them and protect them, and that everyone would come back after the first of the year, Father, and that there would be a great desire to learn and to know and to achieve. Father, we just ask your blessing upon this school district, everybody that's associated with it in any capacity, Father. And we ask that you would guide us, protect us, and bless us, everything that we do and everything that we say, for we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If we would please stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Lotzenheiser. At this time, we do have a quorum. All of our board members are present, so we are able to conduct business today. Do we have anyone to sign up for open forum? Okay. That takes us to the adoption of the agenda. Board, I do know that there is one additional item that needs to be added to the agenda, and that is the cover page for the IDEA Part B application for special ed. So I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to add that item. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but where is it going to be added?
We can add it under the Office of Support Services. We can make it item number 9I. So that's item number 9I, and that's the cover page for IDEA. So I've made the motion. Is there a second?
Well, I've already.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lotzenheiser. So it has been motioned and second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. If it is the board's pleasure, we can take all 3 at one time. Is that okay? All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mrs. Fisher. Is there discussion? All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that of the Office of Superintendent, goal updates. Dr. Hickman.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Shannon, if we can start with dropout.
Thank you. Are there any questions about that? No questions. Next item, school safety.
Okay, school safety report.
right, board, are there questions about that report? If not, Ms. Fisher.
Yes, I do. Mr. Shannon, thank you very much. What does the district, the administrators, what is contributing to the increase in the significant areas?
Dr. Cooper, if I may answer, we feel like that we have some work to do with our counselors and administrators as far as one-on-one small group counseling needs to take place. We put in practice some proactive things that can take place before the action actually happens. And that is also making sure our administrators, teachers, and counselors are more visible during those, I guess you would call, high incident times, which are changing of classes, cafeteria, things like that, to make sure that they see an adult every time they think about doing something that's unacceptable. And that kind of curves the things that we have. And we really, really want to work with our counselors and some outside agencies to come in and mentor our children to make sure that we model and train on appropriate behavior. And we think that we can do that as we go in second semester.
One other question. Class cutting seems to be one of the highest categories of incidents or infractions. Where are they going when they cut class? Are they cutting class and remaining on school property, or are they cutting class and leaving school property?
Well, I'm going to answer that, Ms. Fisher, and I appreciate you answering that question. Well, one of the programs that they instituted at the high school and the middle school is a lockout. And so once a student is late, then that's considered cutting class. They're locked out of their classroom and they automatically report to in-school suspension. And so we're looking at the effectiveness of that to see if it's deterring students from being, late to class by happening, and they're reporting to a safe place. They have to report to in-school suspension, as opposed to if you go to our buildings, during the school time, the hallways are not trafficked at all. And so we're just trying to figure out a different way to not have kids come to class so late or late during class and takes away from instructional time.
Thank you, and that was my concern. And now I'm hearing that the kids are protected if they arrive late. So that's mainly what my concern were.
A large part of it. A large part of it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, that brings us to the workers' compensation report that correlates to goal number 4.
Or we have letter B with learning earnings. I'm sorry. Ms. Beth, I apologize, Madam President.
I heard Mr. Shannon speak of learning earnings, and so I thought that was the presentation.
Well, with the learning earnings, what he kind of alluded to was that's our PBIS, which is positive behavior support intervention. By law, you need to have, instead of just consequences, you need to have a positive way to start to shape and promote behavior. And the neat way that the board had supported me and we actually paid for was learning earnings. And I know the board said that you would like evaluations of the programs that we do have. And this is a program, excuse me, that we were allowed to provide evaluation for. And the neat thing is, again, virtually students can be rewarded for their behavior where they receive money, in a sense, for their behavior. It's virtual dollars. And it goes into a virtual checking and savings accounts just like the real world. And so they can either, first of all, they have to accept it, and they accept it, and the teacher has kind of an anecdotal description of why they received that money. And it's all shaped around our 4 R's. Those kids can choose to put it in the savings to save it, or they can leave it, which will collect interest, or they can leave it in their checking, and they have an opportunity online to digitally look at all the items that are available that they can buy. And so what it does is, one of the premise behind college success and success in the world period is delayed gratification. So a child can see, for instance, let's just say a limo ride, which like they did at the middle school, a limo ride at the end of the school year, and if I really want that limo ride, there's only one, and it's worth a lot. And so I can delay gratification of buying the little things of candy, a little, toy here, a little ball, and I can keep saving and work towards that goal. And I know that other kids are still trying to work towards that goal too, maybe. And so it's a matter of doing what I'm supposed to do to occur that monies, and then allow my savings to also occur interest, and to be able to purchase an item. And parents can log on with their child too, with the same password, and see what their child has been doing as far as being rewarded for the positive things that they're doing. So as a result, when you look at they're going to have a category of people who used it, or students who it was used on, and a category of students who it wasn't used on. So that's just an overview of the district usage of 76%. If you can go to the next slide. And there is a usage by school, and that's going to be important when we talk about this discipline infractions and what schools having more infractions for what reasons. If you can go to the next one. And then, of course, the middle school and high school, it's a large percentage that was not using it. And so when you look at where our disciplines are coming from, and so if you keep going, Beth, I'm sorry. So first we looked at failing and passing grade. And so what this is showing you is that those who used it had had a reduction in failing grades between the two groups. And so obviously, again, if you looked at the middle school and high school who didn't use Learning Earnings, but when you look at those students who were motivated to have better grades and those students who or not, it was more likely that if you use Learning Earnings and you're a student that was involved and had checked online, had received points and those kind of things, those students were more likely to reduce or not have a failing grade. And then it went, can you go back down? I'm sorry, Beth. Right there. Yes, and then so the failing grades in the district and that's our baseline from last year of failing grades. And so if you look at the first one is the baseline. So those who used it, they actually not only reduced those who didn't use it this year, but we also went well below the baseline of last year. And the other interesting fact is if you didn't use it, you actually spiked the number of failing grades for a student. Over the uses of last year. And please understand that the uses of last year is incorporated into because no one used it. And so that's the whole mix. Okay, Ben. All right, and then it goes failing grades by school. And so we're able to look at that. So the discipline is one of the things that we also just touched on. And so it's a 32% reduction in those who, in non-state reported discipline infractions between the two groups. So those who Learning Earnings was used on, they were less likely to have any type of simple infraction used against them. If you want to keep going.
So, Dr. Hickman.
Yes, ma'am.
For the upper grades, what can be done to motivate and encourage those students to actually use the program?
It's actually us, the teachers, to have to reward the students to use it, to put it on the forefront. And it's a good program. You would think that because it's the virtual nature of it, that it's geared more towards older students than younger students. But if you look in our stores, in our elementary schools, they all have the stores where it's tangible. In the high school, the store is not there yet. They're in progress of doing it, and we're in the middle of the school year. In the middle school, they're just establishing their store, and then it's a matter of rewarding kids for doing the right thing. Because that was the whole point of Caught in the Act, is because you want to change the culture and catch kids doing the right thing and promote it and reward it, and therefore that shift will be that more students are more likely to use it. Okay. And so if you can, so you guys kind of get the gist of it, and all the way at the end, if you keep going, because it was clear data, even absences. Can you go to attendance? The students, it was a 37% reduction in attendance for those students who Learning Earnings was used on. And so it's covering a gamut of the responsibilities that we have to our students to motivate them, to allow them to come to motivate them to come to school, make the right choices, and develop a resistance to failing grades. So if you keep going down, Beth. All right, and so the summary of it was obviously a 54% reduction in failing grades, 30 to 60% reduction in discipline infractions, and a 37% increase in attendance. Obviously increase meaning those students who were more likely to attend. And only 1 in 4 students in Columbus has even logged into Learning Earnings. And so that whole portion that skewed the number was from the middle school and high school. And so in order for them to see what a teacher said about them and rewarded them for good behavior, they had to log into their computer and see it. And so it has to be promoted within the fabric of the school district. And so it's a matter of, we have sat down and talked with the high school principal and middle school principal, but the real thing is also the counselors. So if you look at our elementary schools, the counselors had this program, and that's what we originally, said, that the counselors are responsible for the social emotional development of their buildings. The counselors are responsible for those type of things, and this was a good tool to do it. So we believe that this is a good program that we're going to suggest to invest in again next year, and what we're going to do is increase the number of students who have access to it and the number of teachers that participate in it. And just real quick, and just from a research standpoint, in the old system of a token economy, to where we used to hand tickets to students who do correct behavior, and those students can, gather those tickets up and, either it goes into a raffle or they can, purchase something or they get bucks or those kind of things. The real reason to be handed tangible things were not for the student. It was actually to remind the adult that they need to be rewarding students. So this is the same thing. And actually, through this program, you can print out bucks, too, that have a barcode on it that the student can log into and put it into the system. So it still has both of a tangible and a non-tangible way, and obviously the older kids, they're not passing around bucks. They could. They'd be surprised what students are satisfied with. But it's really about getting the adults more involved, and instead of looking at negative things and want to consequence kids, is start getting adults involved in promoting positive behavior and shaping that. Thank you.
One question. Sorry.
Ms. Fisher.
I'm excited about this, and I'm excited because I've heard of excitement from some of the students when we visited the schools. But is this being translated to parents at the Parents Academy?
Yes. Well, that's on our agenda to explain. There's a lot of what I'm doing is the Parent Academy just met with PEP, and that was the group that we invested in to have professional training last year. Mm-hmm. And what that group is going to do with Ms. Buxton is that they're going to start training the parents on a lot of the digital platforms that we have, a lot of the ways that they can access and monitor their student and help support their student and help support the school and their student being successful. So yes, ma'am, it is on the agenda for rolling out next semester. This semester, what we concentrated on was equipping the parents with academic type things that they can work with their child at home and start to feel more comfortable, and to have those questions answered about the curriculum and all those kind of things. But that's going to still be there. And then on the side, we're going to have this parent group that's going to go around, and they're excited about it.
All right, are there other questions? If not, that brings us to the workers' compensation report.
Madam President, Dr. Hickman, members of the school board, you see the report before you. We have had 19 incidents this school year since July 1st. If you recall, at the beginning of the school year, we did set a goal to keep that number under 40 for the school year, because that does directly impact our workman's comp insurance. If we keep at the same pace, we will not meet that goal. We'll be slightly over, so we are working with all of our employees to provide the training needed to get our number down. Unfortunately, some of the things that you see on the report, there is no training for. Some things just happen, so we're trying to work just to keep those numbers down.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Are there questions, board? If not, that brings us to the student attendance report and the teacher attendance report, and they both correlate with goal number 1.
You see those reports with the numbers reflected there. We do have most of our schools meeting the goals that we set forth at the beginning of the year with student attendance and teacher attendance. Some have not. But each month, one program that Dr. Hickman has implemented this year and at the end of last year are the monthly, we call them the Big 3 meetings, where we call our principals in to meet with our testing coordinator and our management team, where we talk about student attendance, discipline, teacher attendance, and academic performance and data. So during those meetings, It's one-on-one or one with our management team group, one principal with the group, and we discuss specifically their site and try to address some of the issues that we see based on the data. So those things are being talked about, and hopefully together we're coming up with strategies to address the areas in which we are deficient.
Questions? If not, teachers report.
Teacher report, same thing. You see the numbers before you. Most of our schools are meeting our threshold or our goals, and as a district, we're right there at 95%.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shannon. That brings us now to the monthly policy review update. Mrs. Lenore.
Madam President, Dr. Hickman, members of the board, you will see on this month's agenda we do have several policies that we are asking for consideration to approve, and then a couple of new policies that we have. The Policy Review Committee is continuing to work through policies that MSBA gave to us for this school year to look at making revisions to. And as you know, many of those policies have been driven by legislative actions for the previous term, or else MSBA, or things that came down from MDE. A lot of our policies that we are presenting before you, and especially that we will be going forth with presenting to you, you will notice they have standards changes to them. And many of those are just because of the accountability standards. The numbers change to those, so we have to update our policies to reflect those. Many of our policies had not been reviewed for quite a while, and they did not even contain the standards. So we're going back to make sure that our policies are updated according to recommendations from MSBA, recommendations from House bills or Senate bills, and from Mississippi Department of Education.
Okay. All right, thank you. Board, do we have any questions regarding the policies that are before us to approve for today? And those are, the policies are listed, BCAD, which is teleconference or video meeting, that policy, the use of IDEA funds, the policy around operating electronic devices while driving on district business, and then the last one is policy concerning student purchase of district-issued technology. If there are no questions, if we could take all of these at once, that would be great. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher,
Second.
second by Mr. Jones. Is there discussion? All in favor of approving the 4 policies in the motion, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. All right. Ms. Lenore, is there anything else?
Also, Section B, we're asking consideration to approve, letter B, the policies listed, policy EBB, policy IHA, II, and IJ.
Okay, and those policies, EBB is the safety program, IHA is the grading system, policy II is testing program, and policy IJ is technology and instruction, electronic information resources. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Jones. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. That brings us now to the new policies for review. Board, the policies that we will have before us in the future are policies on the accounting and reporting, the library media materials, and the annual summary of policies reviewed. That brings us now to the consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? I'll make the second. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion signify with your right hand. Okay, let the record show that Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Lotzenheiser, Fordell, and Mr. Jones are in favor. All opposed? Let the record show that Mr. Spears is in opposition. The motion does carry. The next item on the agenda is that of the Office of Personnel. Dr. Hickman.
All right, Mr. Gregg.
All right, Madam President, Dr. Hickman, members of the board. Before you, you have a consideration to approve a job description for a special education compliance coordinator and / senior special education case manager. And this is a newly created position designed to help address needs of the district. Dr. Hickman and management team have consulted on this position, and we have identified a candidate that will be suitable for the position. You will see that person's name later. But we just ask you all to consider this position.
So, Board, at this time, we have the position, title, and description before us for consideration to approve. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Is there discussion?
The funding is coming, it's already within our budget for the case manager's positions, for the 2 positions that I eliminated. What we're doing is merging those positions into one. This individual that we're going to later recommend for this position is also, well, first it was a position that was recommended by the state when they received 24-page findings with several findings on each page. And they kind of told us how to solve this position, have a solution. When we talked about our case managers, and they're actually the way it was written or invented or whoever put those positions in place, they do not have any requirements of a certification or anything, but yet they're in charge or they're over special education teachers. And the pay is so low that the people that we were attracting were people who've never even picked up a special education paper pamphlet in their life. And so by combining this position, we're able to get a highly qualified person. This person that we're suggesting, Chakomsky, she was a special education teacher, and in the Meridian area, she is a special education lawyer. She, not for school districts, but for parents and students. And so she's very highly qualified for the position, and will definitely get us in compliance and help transfer this program from here on out. And so the question is, we had 2 unqualified people running it, and now we will have 1 qualified person running it. We had, and I explained this in the last meeting, where we had 3 people total in that office. We had the supervisor and 2 case managers. Now we will have the director, supervisor, and a senior case manager / compliance individual. So now we have 3 highly qualified people within that position. And we already discussed with our attorney about the needs of our special education program and where we need to take it.
And the only other question I want clarified is that when we went through the budget and we went through the different salary scales, the scales for the case managers, because we were told they were being eliminated, were not approved. So while we did not approve the salary scales and the job description for those were actually stripped out and not voted to approve, they were still put in the budget?
They were in the budget that you approved. Those positions and those funds were still there for the positions, and what we did not eliminate those positions. That's not what was suggested in the board meeting. What was suggested in the board meeting was that we can have the position of the director, and we were going to write additional positions within the special education application. We were not able to do that within the special education application because we missed the timeline because of the kind of dissension between those positions. But the money is there, yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, let me clarify also. So we have, for that, an assistant principal. So we also eliminated a position, so the grants writing. So we still have the money left over also for the grants position that we're suggesting for an assistant principal in the middle school, because we have 2 assistant principals and this will be the 3rd. And so it was a combine of funding from positions that were eliminated and the funding source is still there, built within our budget.
Okay.
All right, so do we have any other questions on this position? It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher, seconded by Mr. Jones. All in favor of the motion, please signify with your right hand. Okay. Please let the record show that it is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the consideration to approve the salary schedule for this position. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a discussion?
Just one question.
Yes.
As far as developing the salary schedule, what was the baseline used to come up with the numbers that are put before us?
Mr. Gray.
Madam President, Dr. Hickman, members of the board, the basis for the salary schedule you see was based upon the consolidated budget of the two case manager, previously existing case manager positions.
But there wasn't a template from, say, another school district that may have this position that stated that this is kind of the salary schedule for this particular position, even though it may have a different name or something, it's still the same duties, and so.
We
we're
aligned
just-
it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just wanting to make certain, so we didn't have like a baseline, okay, in this school district A, they have this position, and these are the duties that ours will have, it's basically 90%, and this is the pay schedule for them. We didn't use a template of that sort. We just kind of combined money to say this is what we're going to pay this person.
We compare, the pay scale is comparable and aligned to positions that's similar within our district.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Similar within our district. So I'm just trying to say, I understand you're consolidating two. You had two $30,000 positions, so you combine the two and you make them 65. I get that, but as far as actual roots in, okay, this is how much a person with these qualifications is doing this role, this is how much that they're being paid. Or this position may be underpaid. I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
We looked at the pay scales within our district. We looked at the pay scales within our district of comparable positions. And then we make sure that by law, when you look at, the different steps, and do we have everything aligned with that?
Okay.
Are there other questions about the salary schedule? If not, the motion has been made by Ms. Fisher, second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. All in favor, please signify with your right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Lotzenheiser, Verdell, and Jones are in favor. All opposed? Let the record show that Mr. Spears is in opposition. The motion does carry. Next, it brings us to the CMSD teacher vacancies. Dr. Hickman. And I believe that's just a report and overview.
Did we do C? I just want to make sure that we did item C.
Yep, you're right. I apologize. Consideration to approve staff personnel items. Board, we've had the personnel agenda to review. That brings us to needing to either approve the recommendations. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser,
Second.
second by Mr. Jones. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify with your right hand. Please let the record show that Fisher, Lotzenheiser, Verdell, and Jones are in favor. All opposed? Please let the record show that Mr. Spears is in opposition. The motion does carry. Now we're at the CMSD teacher vacancies. Dr. Hickman.
Yes, and that report is just to kind of alert you guys of where we're at as far as, vacancies throughout the district that we need filled. And so that's just something to consider, and I was talking with the State Board of Education, and I was talking with Dr. Kim Benton, who was the deputy, and we were discussing the shortage throughout the state and how could we remedy that situation of getting highly qualified people within our district and not just getting warm bodies in the seats. The other thing that is a trend throughout the state is in more higher needs districts that we have a lot more subs, full-time subs who are teaching the classroom, and how could we change the shift to get highly qualified people in front of our kids, that every student deserves to have a highly qualified teacher. And then also, the tragic loss of two of our teachers, which also led to a couple of the vacancies throughout our district.
All right, thank you, Board. Do we have any questions regarding teacher vacancies? All right, that brings us to, and I do just want to pause and say that we have both of those families in our prayers, the Rutherford family, and was it Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And the Brooks family in the passing of both of those teachers from our district. So the family, both of those families, they have our condolences and our prayers. The next item is the Office of Support Services. We have the consideration to approve a waiver of the facility fee for the Rutherford family in that funeral service that was conducted. Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Is there discussion? All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is the consideration to approve the waiver of the facility fee for Hopkins Lupus Walk at the Columbus High School track. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? Verdell will make the second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
That's one question.
Ms.
In
Lawson.
conjunction with this event, have we asked for a certificate of liability insurance? And has Mr. Dunn reviewed that and these others if it's required?
We have not, because it will be a low-impact type event, and we're not required to have that for a one-time, low-impact event.
All right, so we have the motion and the second. All in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is consideration to approve the Columbus High School Drama Club overnight trip to Meridian, Mississippi. Is there a motion? It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Fisher. Is there discussion? All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is consideration to approve the Columbus Middle School Drama Club overnight trip to Denison, Texas. Is there a motion to approve? Has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Fisher. Is there discussion? All in favor? Dr. Hickman?
And I want to thank the board for allowing these youngsters to go on these trips. One of the things you guys charged me with was developing a whole child to make sure we just don't have an academic child, but we have children who have opportunities to flourish in all sorts of areas. And so we have a big movement coming with a lot of children who really want to participate in our drama program. And you're going to see the effects of that. We're going to have our first large district-wide play from a professional Broadway play that our students are going to start working on in January, and they're going to perform it for our whole district in April. So look forward to that, and this is just building the basis of that, and so thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hickman. So we have the motion by Mr. Jones, the second by Mrs. Fisher. All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is the extracurricular activity schedules that we've had to review. Board, is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Verdell will make the second. Is there discussion? All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is the amended Columbus High School basketball schedule. And Board, if you would allow me, I can take the basketball schedule and the soccer schedule together. All right? Is there a motion to approve? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a discussion? All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is the consideration to approve the additional track repair costs from the CMSD fund balance. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Verdell will make the second. Is there discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Spears.
One question I want to go back and understand, because it's noting from the fund balance, and that may, it seems to be different than the fund that we allocated to athletic facilities money to. So with the $120,000, $30,000 that were not expended with all the other projects, is there something that that we could, okay, what is this?
Go ahead with your question, sir.
Well, I just want to know, as far as, what is the amount that we're going to, the 120,000, we talked at one of the meetings about doing the after school and different things. So
And we did approve that for our after-school tutoring.
yes, I understand it was approved, so that means the money's not there to spend on what it was earmarked for.
No, sir, it's spent towards academics, direct academic interventions for our children. And then what I just passed out to you would be the impact of that in our fund balance.
Okay. So, let's see here.
And Mr. Spears, excuse me for just a second. I just asked Ms. Woodard to place a copy of what Dr. Hickman gave to us at the table for the public to review if they need to.
Thank you.
Okay, so help me understand something here then. The beginning fund balance here, 6.166 million. I see that as the beginning fund balance on our fund balance report, which we have yet to get to. So that's deducted off the beginning, but our ending fund balance is 5.237 million. So,
I don't see a 5, sir.
well, I know because it's not on here. If you look at the actual report that we're given for the fund balance, it'll show you instead of 6.166, which is indeed our beginning balance, the ending fund balance for this particular period as of 11/30 is 5.237 million.
And do you want to explain, because the difference is, there's a difference between fund balance, I think what everybody is using the word kind of loosely, and cash on hand that we have, but
Well, one of the things that we'll see later on the statement of fund balance, the fund balance on that particular statement as of November reflects year-to-date from July transactions that have that's affecting the fund balance. The report that you see here actually has the historical data fixed amount for the fund balance as of June 30th. So the true fund balance as of June 30th was 6.1, and then based on that historical number that can be readily identified and pinpointed, less those fund balance purchases and all of the other transactions that have occurred year to date, that is the actual net fund balance at this point. We have to keep in mind that the transactions year to date are already budgeted. What we're looking at is the definite fund balance that this district has incurred and has as a fixed point, which was June 30th.
Okay. So I ask my question once again. We're showing here $6.166 million as our fund balance. If you look at the cash report for 11/20, let me just clarify. Is this for 11/20, Fund 11/20, the 6.1? Okay. So if you look at the reports we get every month, you have your fund balance report, which is the beginning 6.166 million. I understand that point. But the ending balance of it is 5.2 for this period. If you look at the cash report, the cash balance report for the same fund 11/20, you will see it will show you as of 11/30 the cash balance was 5.861 million. So the 6.166 million is a beginning balance. It is not an accurate balance for what we have. And
So this-
further, may I
You
just ask the other question, which I know that this is something that should probably be discussed before we get to that, is that my other issue, and I have it all written down here, is that the reconciliation of the bank statements. We do not have reconciliation of the bank statements for September, October, or November. We have one listed here for December, which would be closing out periods in October, but we don't have the board cash report. We have not had the board cash report reported to this board since August, and I've repeatedly asked about it, and asked about the money that we have. So now we're asked to, well, we already spent the money that was earmarked for this project, now we're going to take out a fund balance. We as a board do not know what our fund balance is, because we're getting jumbled numbers here that do not make any sense. And if I'm wrong, prove me wrong, but here's all the numbers. Everybody here has the same thing. You have the same thing, so could you explain to me why we don't have the reconciliations for September, October, November?
You should have the bank reconciliations for all of those months.
We do not. If we could get Ms. Tippett, she can pull up the previous meetings there, and if you look at the reconciliations, you're going to see the exact same document for September, October, November, and they're all as of June.
This is the bank reconciliations that you received as of June through that period of October when we're closing the books is a normal practice for CMSD. Until the final books are closed and all of the reconciliations are brought forward, it has been the practice of this district to receive that June statement reconciled, because we can't give you a false certification until we get all those statements reconciled. If we were to give you a certification where I've signed off saying that those bank statements have been reconciled, I would be lying to this board. And until those statements are reconciled, I can't give you fraudulent statements saying that October or August statements have been reconciled. We were in the process of closing the books through mid-October. And until that is done, that has been the normal practice of CMSD to give you the latest true reconciliation statements. And that's what's been done.
So we have before us the request for the additional repairs for the track, which we did have a presentation at our review meeting by both firms who were working that project to explain to us what was needed and how much the cost would be. So at this point, we're going to move to call for a motion for consideration to approve the additional track repair cost.
You have a motion and a second.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Lotzenheiser. So if there's no more discussion, all in favor of the motion signify with the right hand. Please let the record show that Mr. Lotzenheiser, Verdell, and Jones are in favor. All opposed, please signify with the right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher and Mr. Spears are in opposition. The motion does carry. The next item on the agenda is that of the Office of Business Management. Board, we have our monthly financial statement reports.
We added an I.
Thank you, the cover page for IDEA. Dr. Hickman.
Ms. Lenore, would you like to explain that, please?
Yes, sir. We're asking for consideration to approve the adoption of IDEA Part B. We actually have some carryover amounts for FY15 have been updated on the project application. So therefore, we're asking your approval to approve the adoption of the IDEA Part B application.
All right, Board, after hearing Mrs. Lenore's explanation of what the cover page actually is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Fisher. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion signify with the right hand. It is unanimous. Now we move to the Office of the Business Management. We do have the monthly financial statement reports. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the fund balance, the cash balance, and the budget status report. Are there questions on anything under item number A? If not, that brings us to the monthly combined and combining financial statement report. Do we have questions on anything there? Brings us to C, the monthly review budget report. Do we have questions? If not, we have item number D, the monthly expenditure budget report. Do we have questions? If not, that brings us to E, certification and summary of the reconciled bank statements. Do we have questions?
Yes.
Mr. Spears.
Will we be provided the board cash report to accompany this particular report? Because we have the summary of reconciliation, but we do not have the board cash report attached to it.
And I'll make sure that if it's a standard report, that should be there.
It should be in the packet now.
Okay.
It should be, I have a copy of it here, and it was submitted to Ms. Woodard. The board cash report should be in your documents.
Okay. Well, because there's one of one showing
Is it on board
here.
books?
I'm looking at board book, and it
No,
shows
I'm
this-
asking Ms. Holmes. Is it on board books? Did you receive it? Because I know we received it, sent something to you late. Did you receive it? Okay. But the point is that we do have it, and we need to provide it for the board then. Thank you.
And just one other thing, it is standard part
That's
of
fine.
what
That's
I'm
why
reporting.
I just wanted to make sure because in previous communication, one board member has asked for a report, and the standard practice is that any new additional reports, all boards will have to vote on it. So I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something in addition to what we normally do to make sure that that process is followed correctly. Thank you, though, Mr. Spears.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the monthly ad valorem tax collection analysis report. Board, do we have questions on that?
Just one thing, I
Mr.
wanted to
Spears.
follow up on something that we discussed all the way back since we were formulating the budget regarding the collection. I think you were following up with Mr. Andrews with respect to the homestead exemption that we collect more from?
Ms. Holmes?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hickman. Madam President, Dr. Hickman, and members of the board. Yes, I did follow up with Mr. Andrews about the issue with the homestead collection amount, and he did speak with someone at the state level, and what we were told was that Columbus is one of 10 districts in the state who get a little bit more than typically you would get because of a law that was passed back in the 1980s, 1985, 1986. When they passed the statute, it was going to reduce the homestead amount that Columbus would have gotten that following year. So to prevent that from happening, the statute required that their collected amount could not drop below a certain amount, whatever that previous year was. So Columbus, what we are getting is correct, although it seems abnormal, but it is correct because of that law, and he referenced one that was back in 1985. But it is correct for Columbus to continue to receive the amount that they're receiving per application.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Holmes. That brings us now to the athletic events report. Dr. Hickman or Ms. Holmes?
Yes, ma'am. You will see for the month of November, if you can enlarge it for me. You'll see that the district received nearly over $12,000 in athletic revenues, and it is trending ahead of what the collections were actually last year. So Columbus has made tremendous strides in the revenues that it's seeing from its athletics events. So we are continuing to trend ahead of last year, and approximately about $60,000 or more is what we collected this year just for athletics, and we haven't gotten into the long stretch yet of athletics for this year. So, but we are trending ahead of last year's revenues.
And hopefully we will have the track on time, and that will be another event that we will have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Holmes. Board, do we have any questions on the athletic events report? If not, that brings us to the presentation of the CMSD travel card option. Dr. Hickman, Mrs. Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes, sir. I wanted to bring to the board for consideration of usage for CMSD using a travel card. The State Department of Finance and Administration currently has similar to a credit card, and it's actually a travel card that can be used by school districts, and it is being used by school districts all over the state to make us a little bit more efficient in how we're handling travel arrangements for the district. Because currently, the district has to requisition and get a check, make sure the check arrives at the hotel in time, a couple of weeks before the party actually arrives there to check in. So we're trying to be more efficient and with this card, we'll be able to reserve rooms much easier, much faster. Also with hotels, car rentals, that sort of thing. Any travel needs of the district, we could use this card for. And it would minimize us having to cut checks to a number of different vendors, and it will streamline the process as we're cutting multiple checks now would be just for paying the credit card bill each month. But we're proposing to put forth a policy for the board to review and approve if it's the wishes of the board to move forward with us utilizing this card option, which would make us more efficient in getting things done in a much more timelier fashion.
But you cannot purchase things like food and other items. I mean, it's real strict as far as what you can purchase and what you cannot.
Yes, sir. The DFA lists a number of things that are acceptable and unacceptable, and some unacceptable things would be like food and fuel for personal vehicles. So in the policy that we're drafting towards for board approval will be identical to what the state has in its policy and purchasing guidelines for the card. It's verbatim from their report.
And so the actual card, the program is a state-sponsored program. So it's not like with some outside vendor with Visa or MasterCard. It is directly through the state.
No, ma'am, it's direct through the state.
And is there a cost to the district if we do decide to go this option?
No cost to the district.
Is there a limit to who can have this card?
Not a limit to who can have it, but I would recommend that we pilot the program with just maybe the superintendent and board usage at this point.
All right, board, what questions do we have?
I do have
One,
question.
oh, go ahead, Ms.
Ms. Fisher.
You said that this would eliminate a check having to be cut and delivered to the hotel, whatever amount of time, 2 weeks, I think you said. So who uses the card for payments to the hotel for lodging accommodations?
We would have-
The district, business office, or?
It would be the program coordinator, and right now for the program coordinator for the district, if the board were to move forward with Dr. Hickman themselves, would be Ms. Brooks and Ms. Woodard. That would be the gatekeepers, so to speak, of the card, and would be in charge of actually handling some of those things for them, such as like the conference registration fees. And I don't know if Ms. Agnew would be involved in that process. We're still throwing around that idea, but right now the gatekeepers of the card would be Ms. Woodard and Ms. Brooks, and they would actually have to sign a statement, you know, acknowledging the things that they are aware of, what can and cannot be charged on those cards.
So am I understanding there's a difference between use by and use for? You're going to be recommending policy that it only be used for the superintendent and the board for the pilot program, but it is not directly used by a board member. You're not
Correct.
recommending that?
Correct.
Okay.
Dr. Hickman would be totally different because he would travel with his card, but for the board, Ms. Woodard would be the gatekeeper.
Are there other questions?
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Spears.
Just so that I understand, the way that has been operated before is that, you know, Ms. Woodard has a copy of my card with her, and so when she needs to make a reservation for me, then she uses my card to facilitate that. And then, of course, at that point, she would send a check to wherever I'm going, as far as a hotel or something. So we're getting away from that particular way of doing it to do it this new way?
So it sounds to me, Ms. Holmes, there would be no need for us to put up our personal cards to reserve rooms in the future if we go this route.
Absolutely not. You wouldn't have to use your personal card.
Okay, and so I'm just trying to see what's the added benefit, because it really isn't a setback to do it that way. So why is it now that we would need to do it this different way?
And she explained some of the things that we have to do when we cut the checks for 2 weeks ahead of time. And then also for the requisitions, also if there was a conference that came up that we didn't have that window of time to cut the check and mail it to the hotel beforehand, then you will have to use your personal card to actually put the monies on your regular credit card. And then, so it just cuts some of that. I know, for instance, a trip for me, when I had to report to the state board, they had TBA to be announced, and then a couple of days before, they told us where we need to be, what hotel, and those kind of things. And so therefore, I had to either pay for it out of my own or do a forced check, which, you know, it's just some issues there to where it eliminates that for the time frame. And then there were a lot of board members that before they didn't feel comfortable with their credit card just being kind of out there in that nature.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I've experienced is if a conference is canceled and your hotel has already been paid, then there's, you know, a process of trying to get the money back into the district to be refunded, and that's been a headache. So, and that's that's the same way other public institutions such as universities work, the same way that we're proposing to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
One other question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a card that's used on our Trustmark account?
No, ma'am. It's actually issued through UMB Bank that the State Department has contracted with to provide these services or use for this card. So it's not our local bank. No, ma'am. It's just the credit card bank. UMB is the name of the bank.
What is it again?
UMB.
Thank you.
So if we don't have any other questions, Board, this will require an action.
I just have one final question.
Mr. Spears?
Just to understand is, now, will this particular, being the structure that it currently has, will it be monitored any more rigorously by the auditor's department than what you might see a normal bank account?
They do actually audit this card. DFA does. They will request you to send in certain documentation, or they may do an on-site visit, but they do audit this card just like they do the teacher's EEF card. Okay. They'll ask for documentation supporting the expenditure that was charged, and they will also do sometimes, again, field audits as well.
Are there other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
It has been motioned by Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fisher. Is there other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify with your right hand. Please let the record show that Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Lotzenheiser, Verdell, and Jones are in favor. All opposed, let the record show that Mr. Spears is in opposition, and the motion does carry. The next item on the agenda is a consideration to approve unclaimed monies submission to the Unclaimed Property Division. Ms. Holmes.
Yes, ma'am. In response, I guess, or request to move forward with getting a lot of our bank reconciliations cleaned up, this is our first step towards getting that done. And I spoke with Robin at the Unclaimed Property Division there in Jackson, and also with Mr. Hemphill. He's been working with us to identify which checks we can move forward on at this point. And any checks that are outstanding that are 5 years or older would be our first phase in getting those reconciliations cleaned up. When we reached out to the State Treasury's Department, one of the requirements is to make some endeavor to communicate with the holder of the funds to try to see, or to at least to notify them that these monies are about to be considered unclaimed. That is one step that we must do. And also, just to make the board mindful of, the bank will not cash these checks. So we're at the point of notifying them that they're being submitted. So if the person tries to attempt to deposit those funds, that check, it will not be honored by our bank. And because of that is the reason why we're wanting to go on and submit these monies to the Unclaimed Property Division at the State Treasurer's Office.
And so, Ms. Holmes, if we do that, then how does that process work if anybody, does come with a claim against the district for a check that they received 2 years ago? How would the process work?
Well, this first set will be for any checks that are 5 years and older. Yes, ma'am. They would have to go out to the state treasurers. We will report the person's name, their address that we had on file at the time that the checks were cut, the amount of the checks, and we will submit and report all of that information to the state treasurer's office. We will notify the individuals that they can go out on the state treasurer's website and verify that they have unclaimed monies, and they will follow the state's process to reclaim those funds.
And so the state at that point is handling that transaction in the district.
Once we void these checks and submit one check reporting all of these individuals, they will communicate directly with the state at that point.
All right, Board, what questions do we have?
The one question I have, is I know it was in our discussion when this was first brought to us, is certain dollar amounts. Now, obviously, you just cancel them off of what you have, then we don't incur any cost for doing that. It's just an accounting procedure. And so, of course, as you also discussed, is that if they were to take this check to the bank for $8.76, they're not going to cash it because it was issued over 5 years ago. So my last question is going to be, will there be any other cost associated with these transactions once you go through the accounting procedure, and then, of course, you do your reporting to the state? If there were to be claim made for something, will there be any cost to the district for these individuals or companies?
At this point, I have spoken with Bart Wise and his office staff about these checks. they will not honor them, period. So there should not be a cost to the district at all. Now, if they were more recent checks within their 6 months, yes. Just judging from preliminary conversations with him and his staff, no, sir. Not based on what we know at this point. Because they are 5 years, they will not honor them. There is no need, according to them, it's no need to really incur style payments on checks that they won't honor anyway.
Okay, and then when you put this report out to the state for individuals to look through and find their name and say that they have $250, whatever the number happens to be, the school district doesn't actually put the money up until a claim is made, correct?
No, sir, we will transmit all of the monies.
Okay.
So you should have a little over $9,000 worth of checks there that are 5 years or older. We are going to submit that entire amount
Okay.
to the state treasurer's office.
And then-
We're actually voiding the checks, but we're not affecting the books because we've already posted in prior years. We've made requests to different state agencies or federal agencies for reimbursement. So it's not going to affect the books. Only thing we're doing is just putting the cash back so that we can send the monies to the state.
And 30 years from now, if you have half of that amount that was never claimed, that will always be in that fund. It will never come back to the school district.
It'll never come back to the school
Okay.
district. No, sir.
Are there other questions?
I do. I have one other question. The total is 9269.58, but the final totals is 9289.58. What's the $20?
She's checking.
Let me just say this real quick. If you look at the bank number, at the very top of the report, it ends in 7310, and there's $20 there. And then if you look, the bank number is 7,500 for the balance of every other check that's there. And so that's where you come up to a total of, for those particular ones, because there's a total there at the top of page 1, and then you add that $20 to it, and you get the grand total.
Because it's actually coming out of two funds, the 7310 is a payroll account, and the 7,500 is the actual accounts payable account. So yes, ma'am.
Thank
That's
you.
correct.
I saw the 20 up there, but I didn't notice the fund, so I apologize. But thank you for clarifying.
All right, so board, we need to take an action on the consideration of utilizing the state services for these unclaimed properties.
Madam, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but while we've gone through the exhaustive effort to compile this report and find out who maybe and this may just be something that never happens, but is there any chance that maybe the district over the years has been issued payment for something from some place that we do not have? We haven't cashed a check, or it got lost in the mail or whatever, and we just never processed it, and there might be money that way?
You mean money that we've left on the
Yes.
table? I kind of doubt that because we
Well, I
need
understand.
every penny that we can get. But
I mean,
it's
obviously,
a
it wouldn't
fair
be from a
question.
primary source like the federal, state, or whatever, but there's instances to where, say somebody gives $1,000 to the district and maybe something was missed.
So you're just saying do
Is there
the
any way that we
reverse
can look to see that?
type of search to
Right.
make sure? Okay.
Right.
I can.
I'm
I
not trying
can
to
look-
create work, I'm
No,
just
no, no,
asking,
I
is
can
there
look
some
for the
protocol that, hey, we missed $2,500 here?
It's
or-
worth the effort.
You know, I'm just asking, so.
I can do that, if that's okay, Dr. Hickman.
A rebate or something like that that was given to the district that just didn't make its way there.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Spears. So now, board, we need to take an action on this item. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Is there other discussion? If not, all in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is under the information-only items. We have dates to remember, and there are quite a few. So, board, we would please just ask that you would note the dates that have been provided and the different events associated with those dates. Now that brings us to closed determination for executive session. Is there a motion? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. All in favor signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. At this time, we'd ask that the public please leave the room, and we will come out and let you know if there are items to be taken up for executive session. Thank you.